Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another Sankarshan Joshi trip. This is a solo Q&A episode. If you don't know what that is, this is a part of the podcast. This is a part of the podcast where I ask a question on my Instagram and I share the responses with you guys in the episode. So the question for today's episode is uh, the best, worst, embarrassing situations that people had from their school, and the responses that I received are quite interesting. So I am gonna have super fun doing this episode. I hope you guys have fun too.
A Sankarshan Joshi trip.
Let me give you guys context to why I'm doing this episode. Uh, so a week ago, my sister got engaged, and so I was super busy. Helping people with the decorations, the food, the cleaning, inviting all the guests, making them feel welcomed. I was like I was busy, and out of all the chaos, I had this few seconds of silence in my head where I was just looking at my sister and I got super emotional because your relationship with your sibling is the most weird, like it's the most weird thing of all the relationship, because when you guys fight you just want to kill the other person, and like when somebody does something bad to that person you want to go rip the heart out of the person who caused the pain. It's like you love, you fight, you show anger, you cry. There's a like wide variety of things, wide variety of, it's like emotions. It's a roller coaster ride basically. And so I was just looking at my sister, I got emotional, and I thought of my first memory from school. So uh, I remember I was 6 years old, and my sister was in first grade, first to second or third, I don't remember, but I used to look at my sister. I would start crying, and I was very young, like 6 years old, and my sister would look at me and she would start crying. I mean, I started crying because I felt homesick. I felt like my mom was very far away from me, and I would feel super emotional. And I look at my sister, and she would start crying. And I thought of this because we've come a really long way since that incident. I've like a lot of things that happened in my school. So since that memory struck me, I wanted to do an episode on like school, like what it's like the key moments from my school that impacted me the most. So before we get into like my experiences with my school, I just want to share like a couple of articles that I found very interesting. So this article is from IFL Science, and this is the headline of the article: class clowns may actually be the smartest kids in school, study suggests. So, in every class, there are different types of people, right? There is, there are the naughty ones. They're the ones who are like silent, don't talk much. There are kids who are like nerds, who are like who always score top, and there are kids who are like bad at academics but they're good at sports. But I mean, out of all these people, you always have this one person in the class who always like makes fun of things, right? Like he's the class clown basically. And this article says that class clowns might actually be the smartest kids in school. I'm going to link this article in the description, so if you want to check this article out you can go check it out. I mean, it makes sense, right? Like, because in order to make something funny, in order to make somebody laugh, you need to have a sense of humor. And jokes are actually like pretty intelligent and it's smart. Like when you listen to a stand-up comedian crack a joke, you go like, why haven't I thought of the joke? And you start laughing because that joke is like quite interesting. And I was sort of the class clown of my class. Like I would I would randomly do something funny. I would, like, let's say if I made like some sound, and if the teacher would come and ask me like who made the sound, I would randomly point out at someone, and then all of my friends would like laugh. So I would do anything to make my friends laugh. So I was that kind of a guy. So in my friend circle, we would do lame shit. I would do lame shit to make people around me laugh. And while I was reading this article, I found it super interesting because people think that like the class clowns, like the jokers, like who always does something mischievous, they they they're always shown in a bad light. Like they're always shown like the person who is a pain to everybody. And when I read this, if teachers actually read this article, they would see them differently. Like, you know, like school is such a weird place, and the most crucial place for students or like young kids to be is because whatever they're going to learn there, they're going to be reflecting that for the rest of their life. It's like that's where they're going to have foundation. That's where they're going to learn the most important principles that they're going to take forward in their life. And I would always feel guilty. So let's say I cracked the joke and everybody laughed, and and the teacher gave me a punishment. I would act all confident. I would all be like cool. Oh, people are laughing. That would make me happy. But like when I went home, I would feel sad. Like I would feel like shit because my intention was not to like to be mean or something. And even my jokes weren't mean. It would just hit the ego of the teacher. You know, when kids are laughing, the teacher always assumes that the kids are laughing at the teacher. So they would beat me, they would give me a punishment, and I would take that with all like laugh and smile and act all cool in front of my friends. And when I went back home, that's when I would reflect. Like I felt super bad. That would actually affect my confidence. I would be like, am I actually like, did I deserve that beating? Oh, probably I did. Like probably I suck. You know what? I might be like the most naughtiest person. Like what if I am actually a pain in the teacher's ass? So I start thinking about all of the things, and whatever teachers said, right? Like whenever they yelled at me, I would start believing, okay, what if I am that person? Okay, maybe I am that person. Because if they're saying that for 10 to 15 times, like you start believing, right? And like teachers are like, they are the most sad creatures of all because they get paid less and they have to tolerate a bunch of kids who are going through a lot of hormones or who are going through a lot of emotion themselves. So like it's basically it's basically they are in a zoo full of mixed animals. And like, yeah, that's how teacher would feel like, right? So not a lot of them love teaching. Not a lot of them put efforts into understanding like what students go through, or like like where they are at, what are their intentions, what are the true talents. Not everybody puts in efforts to figure that out. I i remember like while I was having this phase of me feeling shitty, like uh I explained, right? Like when teachers would yell, I would start believing that okay, I am shitty, I am bad at studies, I am maybe I am dumb, but then this one teacher really impacted my life. She was our English teacher. So uh, she always saw me as a talented person. So I mean, I don't know if it is like if it's normal or if it's good thing or a bad thing, but I always thought I was special when I was a kid. Like I always thought I was gonna do great things in life. So I like whenever I go to school or when people were around, when I was talking to teachers, even though I scored less, I would still be confident because I always thought I was special. So when teachers started yelling at me over and over and over and over, when I started hitting like my bottom, she would point out the things that I'm good at. So my English teacher, her name is Jaishri. uh, i i I really respect her. Of all the teachers that I've had in my life, she's one of the teachers that I really, really respect. And so when like I would actually do something mischievous and I would put blame on somebody else, and I would act like I'm innocent. So I would make this facial expression as if I didn't know what's happening. And she would look at me and she would say, you know what, you are really talented. I think you should try acting. Like you should try to become an actor. I always deep inside had interest for acting. I wanted to be an actor, but she pointed that out. You know, that could have gone in multiple ways. She could have yelled at me like all the different teachers did, but she didn't. She like she made me feel like I am good at something, which motivated me to do well in her class, because I wanted to not let her down. Like I felt like, she thinks that I'm good at something, I should not let her down. So I would never do stupid shit in her class. I mean, I would still crack jokes. She would give me like mild punishments, which is like cute, but nothing harmful. So yes, and that incident impacted me. Of all the things, I was good at dancing when I was in school. Like, I mean, even now I can dance. I'm a little rusty right now, but I love to dance. And when I was in school, that was one thing that boosted my confidence like anything. Like every year, we would have this annual, uh, like like a function. Like what do you call that? Like we would have an annual day where we would perform dance and we would perform skits. So that's like a big deal in our school. And every year I would just look forward to that day, because like 2 months before the annual day, you start practicing like you start practicing and you get a choreographer who's choreographing the dance. And every single annual day, I would always be at the front of the stage, because yeah, like I told, I was slightly better at dancing than my peers. And that made me realize, like, I'm good at dancing. And when my teacher pointed out that, you can act, you should try acting or something. And like these two things, right? Like it made me realize that, see, when I am good at something, let's say dancing, somebody else is not good at dancing, but they are good at academics. So that gave me a perspective like, not everybody is good at everything. And that was like an epiphany that changed how I view everything. Then I started thinking, oh, like you don't have to be good at everything. Like you don't have to be great at studies. You don't have to be great at sports and studies. You don't have to be great at everything that you do. Few people are better at certain things. And I realized that boosted my confidence. Like like from then, anytime any of the teacher yelled at me, or I mean, this was as I was growing up, right? Like any teacher yelled at me, or like they yelled at for getting bad marks or doing something mischievous, I always thought, I don't have to be good at academics, I just have to do decent. If I'm not interested in that, I don't have to force myself to do that. So I would put my focus on other things. Like I was moderately good at sports. So I like every time there would be like a physical training, like a PT class, or like we would have like a sports class, so that's what we called. So we would just go out, play football. And every like other than annual day, there would be this 1 week in our school where it like we would have sports competition. And that's the other thing that I would be interested in, because I was never like getting the gold, but I was always like silver or bronze. Like I would not be the best at sports, but I was like average, like above average, like moderately good at it when I was kid. Now I mean, other than lifting weights, I don't do any other sport. But like that gave me like that also added to the perspective. Like some people are good at sports, they might not be good at academics. So then I started realizing what passion is, like what like then I love doing certain things and I hated doing certain things. So then I realized what passion is. And then one day my dad told me, in life, do whatever you are passionate about, like what do you love. And then I was like, Oh, I'm passionate about a lot of things. So I kept doing multiple things, but my parents were always disappointed in me when it comes to academics because I didn't really score good marks. But every time I performed in an like on stage, when every time I danced on our annual day, when I came off stage while we were going back home, my parents would be so happy and proud of me. So that made me like it gave me even more confidence that it is okay to not be like to not nail at academics. So it reduced my guilt. I started enjoying my life much better. And let me move to another article that I found interesting. So, this is the title of the article, and this article is from lifehack.org. That's the website. So, uh, the title of the article is 11 Reasons Why You Should Admire Naughty Kids. So, the first is they are independent, like they don't depend on anybody. So they like to do things and they like to take initiative. They are creative. Naughty kids are creative. I mean, I'm assuming that this article is talking about like like most, like majority of the naughty kids have these traits, if not everybody. Uh, they are sensitive. Naughty kids are sensitive. Like, isn't it crazy? Like, naughty kids, like people who do a lot of mischievous things, they seem so much more confident to other people, but deep down they are so sensitive. It's exactly what I was talking about, right? Like when I would crack a joke, that class clown part, like every time people laughed at me, like be I would feel so confident. But when I went back home and I have this guilt trip, and it makes sense, guys. Like naughty kids are sensitive, they just seem like they don't care. Maybe it's just a facade that they're putting. Naughty kids have conviction, so they have the ability to lead, to be leaders. Yeah, I found this very interesting because you know how things would change if teachers actually saw naughty kids from this perspective. Do you know how they would, like the way they would talk to that kid, the way how they would deal with that kid would be entirely different. Like they will stop looking at that kid as something like as something is wrong with him. Like he's not somebody who is flawed. I mean, everybody is flawed, but you're trying to make that kid fit into a metric. You're making him fit into a box, and just because he doesn't fit in that box, you categorize him as the outcast, right? Like he's always the, like, how do I put this out, guys? Like every time I went to teacher, every time my parents came to school, they would have to hear like hundreds of complaints because I wasn't like studying, I would make noise or I would do something mischievous. They would have to hear so many complaints. And then parents will start worrying about their kids. But jokes on you guys. Naughty kids have conviction. Suck on that. Yeah. And it says they are strong. Naughty kids are strong. Isn't is like, look at the irony of this. Like in the previous point I mentioned naughty kids are sensitive, and now it says naughty kids are strong. I think that in order to be strong you need to know what it is like to be weak. So it makes sense, guys. They are strong probably because they are sensitive. So yeah, these are the kids who go against the grain, right? Like they dress differently, they don't mind. I mean, they partly want to pop out of the crowd, and that is being strong, guys. And the next point is naughty kids want to be understood. Holy shit, that's so true. Like now when I look back, right, I so wish that like all the teachers who thought that I was a bad apple, like I was like mischievous, or whoever saw me in the bad light, I wanted so badly for them to understand me. I was like, see, this is not my intention. My intention is not to zone out in a math class. It's just that that's boring and I'm not interested in it. Like, and teachers would make you feel guilty, right, for not being good at that subject. I mean, how do you expect a kid to be good at everything? There are so many languages, there are extracurriculars. They like, nobody forces kids to excel at sports, right? Maybe their parents, but not their the teachers won't. push them, then why are they pushing to excel in academics? So yes, I badly wanted teachers to understand me, and that's why that one period where my English teacher told I was talented in something, that that entirely changed to, like, things with me. Like, it's the same as self talk. Like when somebody is kid, whatever teachers talk to them, whatever parents talk to them, that becomes their self talk, because they don't actually know the concept of what you say to yourself impact, because they're like sponge. And even psychologists will tell you, like, kids who grow up in very negative environments, in very wrong environments, tend to be much more negative, uh, like growing up, like their thoughts, they'll have a lot of depression, anxiety, like there's a lot of impact there. So they're sponge, they absorb. And why don't teachers understand this? They have such huge impact, they have such huge responsibility. They have to, like, they are framing the psyche, the psychology of the kid. Teachers have to be very careful, like how they talk to a student. There's something called constructive criticism. You can tell a student that they, like, you can tell them what they did wrong, and also explain how they can do better. Like, all the teachers will just yell at kids for doing bad, but who the fuck would say how to get better? How do they do better? Nobody does. Yeah. And the next point is, naughty kids say what is on their mind. Don't you think that makes it easier for teachers to read that kid? Because they say what is on their mind, they don't deceive things. And I think that's something that's a trait that this, like, people should admire. And the next point is, naughty kids have a lot of energy. I mean, of course, because they're naughty, they do a lot of mischievous things, and hence they have a lot of energy. And the next point is, naughty kids are ambitious. And I find this point resonating with me a lot, because until this point, I've been talking about just me. I had a best friend from my school who I'm still in touch with. He's a really good friend of mine, and no, his name is Akshay. So we both were thrown out of class because we would do something mischievous, and all the kids in our circle, some of them who were like naughty, they were all ambitious. Like, we were all ambitious, like me and my, like, this Akshay friend. Like, we would sit out of class, and we would say things to each other, like, you know what, one day in life I'm gonna do something great for myself. And then all of these people will regret for doing things like that and putting us out of class. And we would, like, the way we would have conversation would always be about doing great things in life. And I don't care if I'm gonna do, like, great things in life or not. But at that point, when I was a kid, when they threw me out of class, telling me that I was the odd one out, that I was, like, I was performing bad or I did something bad and put me out. And then I'm talking about doing something great in life. And having a friend exactly like that, resonating the same energy back at me, that meant so much, man. That framed my confidence. So yeah. And the next uh the next point is, naughty kids are scientists. I mean, it's understandable, right? They always like to do some little experiments where they put something into something, add something into the other thing. Like, they love to explore, they love to see the unseen, or like, I don't know what the exact word is there for that. They love to explore, man. They love to experiment. So yeah, they have a problem solving ability. Like, naughty kids, when they are trying to experiment with something, they also have the ability to solve problems. So another thing, for the engagement, one of my aunt came, to attend my sister's engagement, and she told me a story from when I was a kid. So I don't remember this, and when she told me, I was super shocked. So I was watching TV with the same aunt, probably like 10 years back, 10 to 15 years back, 10 to 12, yeah, whatever, like 10 to 12 years back. I mean, I was watching TV with that aunt, and on the news they were showing that a kid fell into a borewell. Like there was a ditch, a long ditch, and a kid fell into that. And parents were all freaking out, and like they got some huge machinery to to put inside the hole and get the kid out. Uh, I just walked away from the TV silently and I went inside my room, and my aunt was wondering like why did he just leave. And I come back after 15 minutes. I actually drew a machine and I was showing it to my aunt saying, you know what, this machine is gonna get kids out of the ditch. So I actually designed a machine uh, that would help that would solve that problem. And she actually told me that story. I don't even remember this, and she told me that, like, I got super fascinated because I've recently finished my bachelor's in design, right? Like most of the projects that you work on, and when you're doing a design, you choose a problem and then you give a solution. and and then I realized I always had that ability in me, like to seek or put efforts into solving a problem. So nobody in my school really acknowledged that. Like nobody, none of the teachers knew. So I can say that they hardly knew me, except for one teacher that I mentioned. They say the last point is naughty kids are lovable. I highly I doubt that, because I was naughty and not every teacher loved me. So this article was, I found it very interesting because this is actually looking at the silver lining. So this is like when teachers like remove all their biases, when they forget all the preconception, and they look at things from a fresh perspective. When they look at the side of positivity, when they look at things like this, like naughty kids are independent, creative, they are sensitive, they are problem solvers, they are scientists, they love to experiment. So when they start seeing it all of things like this, right, they would educate the kids to pursue what they are good at. They would push them into experimenting things, they would push them into solving problems. So yeah, I don't know why not a lot of people, like not a lot of teachers do that. Because one of my friend who studied in the same school as me, he was always like, he was not the naughty one. He was not the class clown. He was the guy who is silent. He was a silent kind who would not get involved in a lot of things, but he was also not good at academics. And I I met him few years back, like couple of years back, and I see that his confidence is shattered. Like he has such high level of self doubt and such low self esteem because of the things that the teachers told to him when he was in school. So I think that parents play a really important role in framing the psychology of the kids. So do teachers, and so does their words impact kids too. When you don't know who you are, you start believing what people say who you are. So that's what happened to him, and I felt super sad because he was a really nice guy. Like he is a really nice guy, and I felt like it was gut wrenching to see him in, like, so sad. Like he was so nervous to talk to people because, like, he told me that when he was in school, when he was scoring bad academics, teacher would tell things like he's good for nothing, like he'd probably quit school or something like that, something along those lines, and his confidence was shattered. So fuck. I feel I feel some sort of connection towards students. So that's why probably sometime in the future I would love to be a teacher. I mean, not like a full-time profession, but for like short period of time go interact with kids. uh, Before I be a father, I would want to do this in my life. So you guys are listening to this and this will be documented, so if I ever forget this, so please make sure to remind me. Before I be a father, I want to be a teacher for short time. I want to see, I want to experience what kids experience. I want to be there. I want to, like, good teachers have a profound impact on their life. So, equally as the impact that bad teachers have. So, like I said, how my friend had a really shitty experience in school and now he's like he's shattered, like his confidence is shattered. I am super confident. I was super confident when I came out of school because of that one teacher who believed in me, who believed that I would do something great with my life. And that's all I wanted to hear. And that's all I cared about back then. And if some other teacher told me some shitty thing, I would be like, fuck you. Like I would not say that. But in my head, I would be like, screw you. I know what I am. I don't have to be good at that subject. You know what the shitty part is? Another shitty part. I used to love mathematics. I would never score well in that subject, and that's the irony. But I love that subject, man. Like, mathematics is something like there's a problem, and if you know how to solve that, you get solution, and it's so rewarding when you get it right. And I really loved mathematics and physics because, like, I love to imagine the problem in my head. Like, let's say, like, they gave a random problem of, you know what, there's a square, like what's the area, what's the perimeter, or you add that square to this square to that square, blah blah blah. If that's a question, I would actually think of shapes, and I would think of one shape combining with the other shape. So I love the way how the mathematics subject was. So, but the teachers made me feel like I'm not good at a subject. Like, it became very competitive. Like, I had to get good marks. If I didn't get good marks, then the teacher would yell at me, and they made me feel like I'm not good at the subject, which made me lose interest. So, yeah, these are all the things that I wish it didn't happen to me. It didn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be this way. Now I'm doing bachelor's in design. Like, whatever I studied in my school, there are very, very, like, not even 5% of what I learned I'm able to apply into my, like, college, whatever I studied, or into whatever I'm doing as a professional. I'm a lead experience designer right now, and I'm working. So there's a very few things that I learned from school that I'm applying, and those few things are mostly personality related and not even academic. So yeah, so now when I look back, academically I didn't gain anything, and and I carried scars out. So yeah, that's all my rant for now. And now, ladies and gentlemen, let's move to the Q&A. Let me repeat the question for today's episode. The best, worst, embarrassing, or funny incident that they experienced in the school. And the first response is from Quest for Cimeria. Ditching school after lunch to go blow shit up with fireworks. I mean, this is an experience. This is truly an experience where you're ditching school, you're going out with your friends, and you're doing some naughty shit, you're experimenting, you're blasting shit with firecrackers. And I'm pretty sure when this person closes his eyes, when Quest for Cimeria closes his eyes, he can literally relive that moment. And I'm pretty sure they're all laughing and they're all happy. Kids love to do things hands on, not sit in the classroom and listen to a failed teacher teach a boring subject in the most boring way. and then yell if they don't pay attention. I mean, yeah, kids love to do shit like this, man. You need to understand that. I never really like did school and bunked outside, like bunk school and go outside. Uh, I remember this one experience where I used to go to school in my bicycle, and I remember one day specifically where I was like, I knew when the school bell rang and when the gates would get closed, which was 9:15 a.m. So I was getting closer at the school, like I was going in bicycle, and I started riding slowly because I didn't want to attend school. I wanted the gates to close so that I would go back home. But unfortunately, I reached school late, but the gate was open and our chief was standing right there. He whooped my ass like a drum, and and he sent me inside, and I had to attend school, which was quite sad. The next response is from Vaishak Dutt. Worst and best experience: being humiliated on stage in front of the whole school. Holy shit, man. I don't know if you guys know Vaishak Dutt. He's been on the podcast twice, and he's a stand-up comedian. He's also an improv comedian. So he's one of the Bisbella Boys. Bisbella Boys is the improv trio based in Bangalore. So I actually asked him more question. I DM'd him asking how being humiliated on stage in front of whole school was the best experience, and he said that that day he lost stage fear. Isn't that fascinating? That supposed to be the worst thing that could happen to a kid, like being humiliated in front of the whole school. So I think he was trying to perform a set in front of the crowd, and they switched off the mic while he was performing, and they forced him to get off stage. And I mean, he found the silver lining. He came out stronger, which could have gone completely opposite, which could have shattered his entire confidence and self-esteem, but he managed to come out stronger. Kudos to you, man. Like, kudos to Vaishak Dutt for coming out stronger, but not everybody has the privilege. So what if somebody is already depressed and suicidal and shit like this happen? They might commit suicide, man. Like, there are a lot of suicide cases in India, especially from kids who, like, the cause is failing at a subject, an academic, and that's super sad. So yeah, never humiliate a student, especially not from the faculty and the school establishment, not from them at least, because kids, they always humiliate other kids, they bully other kids. I mean, as sad as it is, that is not as worse as being humiliated from teachers in front of like a huge crowd. So yeah, now let's move to the next response. Sushupta.joshi. I once entered boys washroom because water was running, so went to turn it off. She is my sister. Sushupta Joshi is my sister, and she told me, like, I went and asked her, like after she entered this answer, I went to her and I asked, like, did you actually go inside boys washroom? And she was like, yeah, because the water was flowing and we have to save water, we have to save the world. She was that type, she was the ideal student, and I was the opposite. Like, every time me, my sister, my parents would go to the, like, parents teacher meeting conference, they would always be smiling when they were talking about my sister, and as soon as they moved towards me, their expression would change. They would actually tell the opposite things of what they told my. They would praise my sister, and then they would look at me and they would be like, your son sucks, basically. He's, yeah. And coming back to her response, I remember, uh, one incident. This was the same period where I was feeling homesick. I like I mentioned right at the start of the podcast, I would look at her and start crying. So once she went into washroom, and I ran behind her, and I also entered the girls' washroom with her because I wanted to go hug her. I wanted her to take me home from school. So yeah, I also entered girls' washroom. I was 6 or 7 years old. So yeah, we both did the same thing. Coincidence. The next response is from Arjun underscore teachings. People finding out my dad is an elected official in Yuba city. Lol. In India, if one of your friend's dad, if your classmate's dad is a politician, teachers are gonna be very careful with the way they're gonna talk to that kid because they know that their dad is gonna screw them if the teacher screws the kid over. So I wish my dad was also a politician, so then teachers would think twice before talking to me. The next response is from Rudra Raval. I cried many times and that's embarrassing. Most worst memory, some funny memory, but there is no best memory. I like how he said there are so many different sort of memories like embarrassing, funny, but there is no specific best memory. And the first part of the answer he says he cried a lot and that's embarrassing. You know what that reminded me of? Uh I was very sensitive when I was young. Like when I was 6, 7 years old, I would look at a beggar and I'd start crying. So I remember this one specific incident. I cannot forget that. So every time I saw a beggar, I would start crying. And once I saw this beggar who didn't have a leg, and he was actually taking a support of a stick and he was begging. So I gave him $5, a coin. And back then that was a huge deal, man. And especially if you're a small kid, you know how many candies you could buy from $5 when you are 7 or 8 years old? Not even that. I think I was less than that. I think I was 5 years old, 5 or 6 years old. Yeah, around that range. So I gave this beggar the $5 coin, and then right in front of me, that bastard, he took his leg out and he ran. So basically, he pretended that he didn't have a leg, and right in front of me, he unfolded his leg and he ran. And that day, when I had that experience with reality, I never ever cried when I saw a beggar again. It's like that's one thing that was like an epiphany where I like that was my first encounter with the cruel, like how manipulative and how deceiving the real world is. And from then I realized there are also bad people, like there are also people who pretend. I mean, he's still begging, like like he's not a bad person, but like he had to do that for a living. But for me back then, I was like, shit, he just lied and he ran. So yeah, when he told me that, like when I read this response that like Rudra Raval like cried a lot of times, I cried a lot too. I was very very sensitive. So yeah, it reminded me of that incident and I just mentioned. And that's all, you guys. That was the last response. This episode was such a roller coaster ride. I went back to my school life, so many memories. I prepare uh, to do these episodes. Like I do a little bit of research, like I looked for articles, like I did. But when it comes to school memories, right? Like I wanted to write down because I didn't want to miss out on the main things. But I didn't, because I wanted to make this a candid experience. So hope you guys had fun. And if you want to be a part of a Q&A episode, you need to follow me on Instagram at a Sankarshan Joshi trip. So Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this podcast is now recorded on video as well as audio. If you want to listen to me, you can head to Spotify, JioSavan, Ghana, Apple Podcast, and Google Podcast. If you want to look at the video version, then you can head to YouTube. Hope you guys had fun. See you guys in my next episode. Bye bye. Take care, my lovelies.
A Sankarshan Joshi trip.